The sky is kind of like an analogy for our mind, right? The clouds go through the sky, but at the end of the day, the sky remains unchanged, right? It's still the sky. You can have thunderstorms, you can have, wind, thunder, lightning, but it never really changes the sky, does it? The sky kind of remains the sky, kind of always in the background. It's kind of interesting. Our mind is just like that. It remains unaffected at the end of the day. Even though, our emotions, which would represent the clouds and thunder, lightning, rain, wind, they come to disturb it for a while, but they never really change its essence, right? The sky is always there in the background. Sometimes we can't see the sky, right? The clouds, they block it. And our difficulties arise when that happens. We don't know the sky, we don't know our mind anymore. So we kind of miss that it's in the background, especially with difficult emotions. Emotions such as anger, jealousy, hatred. That's a big one. There's a lot of hate in the world nowadays, whether it's separation, because of color, because of religion, because of a million other things that we separate on, right? Even at the very simplest level, man and woman, we got that. We got ageism. We got so much. But at the end of the day, the sky remains, right? It's unchanged. So how do we go about mastering this? How do we go about telling ourselves, well, the sky will remain the same at the end of the day, no matter what happens in the sky or my mind? It's still going to be all right. It's still going to be okay. That's the hard part. I myself, I do a lot of meditation, pretty formal. It's religious in no way whatsoever. I simply enjoy it. I sit in an Indian style on the ground, my legs crossed. I close my eyes when I meditate, simply because it's very helpful to not have that visual. It shuts down that visual part. The visual wants to always be seeing something exciting, and it'll see something and make something out of nothing. So I really close my eyes when I meditate. And anybody who's meditated before, they may think that there's some goal in meditation. There's really not a goal. The goal in meditation is to have no goal. It's not really doing nothing, which is kind of hard to explain, because you're doing nothing, but you're letting go. You're letting go of doing things. And what does that mean? Or what does that look like? It looks like doing nothing if someone's observing you, but in your mind, you're kind of not paying attention to the thoughts anymore. So, for example, you're sitting in meditation, whether you're, traditional or sitting on a couch, in a chair, comfortable, you sit there, okay, and you have a thought that arises. Some people have thoughts that arise very quickly, one after another. They go like rapid fire, good thoughts, bad thoughts, neutral thoughts, and they'll pay attention to them. They'll get entangled with them, and they don't know how to not pay attention to them, and that's the tough part. So in meditation, we let the thoughts go without paying attention to them. So it's kind of like the sky, right? The sky lets the clouds go. It doesn't try to change the clouds. It doesn't try to control the clouds. A lot of the time, especially with negative emotions, we will have an instance to where we have a negative emotion. Okay, let's say a big one for a lot of guys, just as a primary example, is anger. Anger is very destructive. So it's like, it's hot, it's quick. You know, we get angry. We get angry at, anger needs an object. With no object, there is no anger. So anger needs an object. Sometimes it's a, it's a person. You know, you're angry at someone, they did something to you directly. So now you are angry at them. It needs the object. So we have the object, and we have yourself, and you have the emotion. Anger is tough. So in meditation, you know, it's really not a spot to be angry, but we can really imagine that if we are angry, how do we bring that non-anger or not paying attention to the anger from meditation into our daily life? Say when we're driving, you know, we're driving around and then all of a sudden somebody cuts us off on the road, you know, really pisses us off, right? Well, that's just a thought. The thought of being pissed off is just a thought, like any other thought. So we practice meditation to let go of thoughts, and whenever it happens in real life, shall we speak, driving, we don't attach to the thought of anger. We just let it go. Why is it in our best interest to let a thought go, especially anger? Because whenever we act in anger, man, we really put ourselves at risk. We put others at risk, and we do things we're always going to regret. And this is specifically talking about anger. Anger is very destructive by nature. I can think of many times in my past when I've, a long time ago, before I really started to find myself, I acted horribly to others, strangely to inanimate objects sometimes. You know, I was such an angry person. A story I can tell about anger especially, I would sit there, and sorry with the game progress, I'm just really focusing on the memory right now. I was angry, just an angry person. So let's say something would trigger me, something stupid. I could be angry at an inanimate object. An inanimate object would trigger me. So let's say the weed eater wouldn't start outside, you know, the pool kind. The pool kind of weed eater would really make me mad because it wouldn't start. I could hardly get going on it, and you know, it wouldn't start, and I'd keep pulling it, you know, and they kind of wear you out after a while, kind of like a lawnmower, right? The lawnmower, you keep pulling it and it doesn't start, it starts to wear you out, and I would get angry at that. Strangely enough, the anger would build, and then I'd start cussing at this inanimate object. So I'm cussing at this inanimate object, this stupid MFing weed eater that has done ruined my day, and now I'm yelling and screaming, and it's quite silly when you look at it objectively from kind of like the side, because it's really silly to get angry at an inanimate object. Like I said before, you need the object, the emotion, and you know, you having the mind, you generate the thought of anger. So that's just one example of how silly anger can be, you know, and how awful it is to whenever we direct that anger at another person. You know, they really don't deserve it. One thing that I've learned is we are responsible for our own emotions that happen. So it's kind of a twisted around way of saying that most people say, well, you made me angry. But when in an objective reality, I let you trigger an angry thought in me, and then I paid attention to it. So I paid attention to it, and then I became angry. I am literally anger at that moment whenever I'm paying attention to the thought of anger. So angry really hurts. Angry as an emotion, it feels very. You feel like you're like kind of like get that adrenaline going. You're on top of the world, and then all of a sudden you can't be beat. You want to smash things into oblivion. You want to bend reality to your way. You want to bend another person. You want to control what they do. You want to control what they say, and that's no good. You don't win any friends, or you don't really win at all by wanting to control others. People or other people, they should have their freedoms, freedoms of speech, freedoms of their body, freedoms in general. So you really don't win at all by doing that. It's actually more harmful to you than you realize, because then you habituate going along with the thought of anger. So it's like you paid attention to it on a regular basis, so now you're more likely to pay attention to the anger next time it arises, but you're not even aware that this process is going on in your mind. So it works on a very almost subconscious level, that without the tool of meditation, you do not have the fortitude to even realize that, oh, well, I just got angry, because it's always in retrospect. It's never like real time until you get really good at watching and connecting to your thoughts. So part of the exercise, because like I said, meditation isn't really doing nothing. It's doing something. It's like active work, especially if you're a beginner. If you're a beginner, you may try meditation for a while. You'll watch a few videos on YouTube. You'll get a feel for it. You'll kind of say, hey, that looks pretty good. Looks like those people are really relaxing. But if you're relaxing, you're kind of missing the point of meditation. It's active work. So whenever you sit, you meditate, you close your eyes, you get in the position, and so the thoughts come up, one by one. Like I just had a thought of a loved one, that's a good wholesome thought. But even now, I'm just not going to pay attention to it. I'm just letting go of every thought. I'm exercising my letting go muscle. So most of our letting go muscles are very weak. We don't even know how to let go of an emotion once it arises in our mind. It's so hot, it's so powerful, we can't put it down. Usually we try to we want to live in this mindset that all we want to do is be happy and enjoy like the sense pleasures, whether it's taste or touch or whatnot. That's not the real world, because the real world, it's full of parts, right? We have two parts. You literally can't have hot without cold, just like you can't have the emotions without their opposites. So it's something that's like a universal rule. We can't get away from it. So if I could give a primary example, love and loss, just like hot and cold, they're together, they're intertwined. You cannot separate them. They must exist, because you have to have a point of reference. In order to know that something is hot, you have to know its polar opposite, what is cold. Otherwise, if I say it's hot and someone else touches it and says no, that's cold, it's kind of like subjective, right? Well, in love and loss, they go together, because if, like, we've all loved people, whether it's our parents, maybe another person, a child, we all know and have the ability to love. But what really kind of it's part of the deal, that whenever you get separated from the one you love, you are going to feel loss, or depending on the degree of separation, right, you may feel broken, because maybe they passed away and you have thoughts of them, and because you love them, the thought of them is intermeshed with love. So now you have love, but they're not there, so you have the loss part of it. And everything that we love it cannot last, because nothing and no one lives forever, right? I mean, we're not immortal. That's silly. So you will feel the loss of them eventually, or maybe you get really lucky and you never have to go through that because you kind of exit before they do, kind of thing. But if they love you, they'll feel the loss of you, right? It's intertwined. We can't get away from these things because they're kind of like basic universal laws. So going back to meditation, kind of the thing is, as we're building our letting go muscle, for a while we just never want to pay attention to any thoughts. We want to let them go. In meditation, you're going to get thoughts that tell you, well, this is boring and pointless. That's just kind of the mind's way of fighting back, because the mind gets habituated with entertainment. It gets habituated with having something to do. People say, well, I'm really bored. Meditation is boring. If it's boring, you're doing it wrong. Because whenever you're meditating, like if you've ever done it or tried it, especially as a beginner, you're going to get bombarded with thoughts, because without a lack of outside stimulus, and it's just you and your mind. So imagine it like this: you and your mind are just sitting in a black space. So the focus really becomes not on the outside stimulus or your senses. It becomes focused on your thoughts and your thought patterns. So you can really pay attention to that. So overall, what is your thought and thought pattern? You can start to really inspect who you are. And through inspecting who we are, we eventually will find that we are good and pure. That's it. That's everyone's nature. Because I don't like to talk about religion very much, but in Buddhism they call it a Buddha nature, that we're all originally good, without all these cloudy thoughts, right? That we're good and pure of heart. I believe that. I don't think that the idea of, I guess, Western original sin, it's not a good, healthy thing for people to think about, because then we're kind of outset from the gate. We're like treated, we're taught that we're bad and we need to be good. We're sinners and we need to work our way up to being good. It's not really like that. It's more like our mind is full of conditioning. That is like a very powerful conditioning of the world. The world and society puts this conditioning on our mind. A lot of it's very unhealthy, because we have things in our modern world that keep us in this loop of feeling as if our thoughts and feelings matter more than the thoughts and feelings of those around us, which really gets us into a lot of jams. I mean, our thoughts and feelings, while they are important to us primarily, are no more important than that person over there or that person over there, because we think and feel in the same ways. We're all human beings. It's part of being human to have feelings. We really kind of get lost in that, to where we are taught the world is our oyster. Is it really? I mean, that's 7 billion oysters, or more, whatever the world population is now. That's a lot to think about. I mean, I don't think that many people introspect enough to start seeing that, hey man, my family, You know, because we have tribalism imbued in our DNA, you know, we really love and respect our family usually. But then if someone says, well, you're supposed to give that love and respect to every stranger that you meet too, because they have the same thoughts, feelings, and emotions that I do, most people are going to say, well, that sounds good on the surface, but they're just strangers. I don't owe them anything. Well, while that may be kind of true, they're still a human being. They do share the same thought processes and emotions as you. They may be of varying intensity because they may be, you know, less loving, or they may be more scared or worried. I mean, how often do we put ourselves in the other person's shoes? You know, often we're just so quick to judge. Like, we live in this really, we put ourselves in this world that's like totally polarized. We got in black and white. Okay, but that's not true. We live in the gray. You know, nothing is truly like good or bad. Like, people aren't good or bad. They do good or bad actions. That's how it is. You know, and then we judge them based on those actions, but then society will say, oh, you're a bad person because you did this, or you're a good person because you did this. But then that's flawed thinking, right? Because a lot of people who do good actions also do very bad actions. And on the flip side, of course, bad actions done by people, those same people can be do very good. It's because we live in the gray, you know. To think that someone is completely good and pure is really kind of naive thinking. We get stuck in that kind of thinking, and it's really too bad because it really limits us, you know. Like, if we're driving along and we see a homeless person, you know, some of us are going to feel a certain way, some of us are going to feel a different way, you know. Like, a thought arises in me when I see a homeless person. I'll say, well, you know, they kind of, you know, they must have done something that got them there. It's kind of their fault. But I try not to pay attention to that thought, because that's just my mind saying that, you know. I'm just putting that out there because I don't know what really happened to them. I've never even talked to that person, but I'm making up this make-believe story about them. You know, maybe it's possible that they had a horrible illness and a lot of their family died, and they just ended up homeless. You know, I mean, a tragic, real deal homeless. You know, they weren't on drugs and they weren't doing anything bad or hurting people. They just lost their house, maybe in a fire or something, and they were a single person, and they didn't have insurance, and they didn't have any savings, and don't know how they're down on their luck, you know. But I don't know, because I'm just telling a story in my mind. But for sure, I mean, if I look at them out on the corner, I can say, well, man, it's really cold out there. I would be cold too, because it's freezing, you know. It helps you feel for that other person at least a little bit. Feeling for other people is kind of like the highest thing we can do. And why would I say that? Because most people are so worried about themselves and what they're gonna get and how to make their own selves feel good, feel powerful, to gain, to have this like capitalistic mindset. You keep on going and gaining money and notoriety and all of that silliness until where does it get you? You know, does it? You know, the old adage does money doesn't buy happiness, right? Money absolutely does not buy happiness. What is rarely offered is peace of mind. Because just because I'm rich and famous doesn't mean that all of a sudden I know how to manage my mind. I know how to manage my thoughts. maybe I'm a millionaire, but I'm still really angry. Maybe I'm a millionaire and because I'm a jerk, and I run over everybody, nobody wants to be around me. So cool, I got all these material things, but material things are just distractions from our thoughts, right? I mean, what's really going on in my head? What's really going on in your head? Thoughts arise, and we either have the choice to pay attention to them or we don't pay attention to them. People don't even really give this any credence when I say that you have a choice whether you pay attention to your thoughts or not. But it's very true. It has to be. I really think that it has to be a choice because otherwise we're just slaves to our mind, right? We're just slaves to what's going on up here. I don't really think that many of us like the idea that we're just some biological slave. But then again, I don't know sometimes. So back to meditation. Meditation is kind of one of those activities that we should do, kind of like brushing our teeth. It should become a daily goal. It should become a daily way to work out. A lot of us, we may work out our body. We do running or jogging, we do push-ups, we do whatever we want to. We know how to enhance our body. The results are visual, right? We see that, this person this person, this woman, this man, they work out a lot. Man, they're so toned, they're so fit, or especially in the case of guys, they got such mass. So we know how to work out our body. We know how to modify our body. We become bigger, stronger. That's pretty cut and dry. But a lot of us don't know how to work out our mind. Our mind becomes atrophied. It becomes atrophied in a way where all we do is all we do is just kind of pay attention to every single thought that comes through our mind, and we never give it a second guess. So, as I was saying, our minds become atrophied. We really just kind of go from thought to thought without ever looking at our ability to not do so. So we kind of become this leaf that's blown about in the wind. So we're kind of at the mercy of the wind then, right? We're kind of at the mercy of the external stimulus instead of being able to be the cat business. She's done now. So instead of being able to really see that, like let's say we spent most of the day being, kind of beating ourselves up, telling ourselves we're worthless, we're no good, because whatever reason we've told ourselves, we just tell ourselves that, kind of these depressing thoughts. So it makes this system to where it's self-reinforcing. So you feed the mind by paying attention to all the depressing thoughts, and the depressing thoughts then kind of snowball because you're feeding them, and they grow bigger, they gain momentum in your mind. So then even though you may not wish to have a depressing thought, because you keep on paying attention to them, they will grow larger and more frequent, and maybe even grow in intensity, which is pretty unfortunate, especially, you want to get out of the depressive loop, but no one has ever showed you how to do so. Our modern philosophy, I guess you'd say, is just throw some medication at it, right? Take some medications that's going to modify your serotonin receptors or whatnot, and it's going to modify the way you feel. Sure, great, it doesn't really work. You're just kind of turning off a part of the brain that's going to send those signals. They're going to be waiting for you whenever you stop taking it, and there's a lot of side effects with a lot of that medication if you look into it. So it's just kind of like a band-aid. They aren't really addressing the problem. And really addressing the problem would probably be going to see a therapist, because a therapist is going to be trained. But even then, very few therapists are going to recommend meditation. It hasn't gained a foothold very much in the West, and even in the East, especially, in your Buddhist countries and such, in the countries they do yoga in, especially, it's all shrouded in this ritualism, which doesn't really help at all. So in the East, they kind of miss the point of meditation, and then in the West, it's kind of viewed as just a relaxing getaway, which is unfortunate as well, because, as I said, meditation is active work. It's a workout for your mind. We work our mind to let go of the thoughts that harm us. Then we can have a better choice whenever thoughts come up that we do not wish to pay attention to. As I said earlier about the homeless man, I don't wish to entertain that thought that is kind of too judgmental, so just let it go. And then I'm kind of at my own leisure, I can kind of think how I want without being my mind modifying me to think a certain way. And then I'm only able to do that because I have a meditation regimen. The meditation regimen, you should do it every day, 20 minutes or so. At first, most people can't do it that long because their mind is just too loud. They'll say, like, I can't sit still. These are all tactics by the mind, because the mind wants to stay in this habituated state. It's a habituated state of power. Power and control. How many of us have gotten into trouble because all we want to do is control? We want to control the world around us. We want to control the things around us. We want to control traffic. We want to control people, pets. We just want to control way too much. That's the mind, though. The mind wants to try to control because it's addicted to certain chemicals that happen and get released whenever we do certain activities. So, like, even benign things that seem benign can really hurt us because they're intertwined with, dopamine and stuff. It really starts to make you think, are we really slaves to our biology? In a way, we kind of are. I mean, our DNA wants to replicate, but that's a whole nother topic. Back to meditation. Meditation is one of the only ways that we can truly heal ourselves, truly from, these kind of negative thought patterns, because they are patterns, and you start to see that even more when you get stronger at meditation. Meditation will start to build, just like a muscle. We get more fit, we get stronger, and our letting go muscle, in other words, the muscle where we can let a thought come up but not to pay attention to it or react to it, gains strength. And how does this help us in daily life? Well, it helps in a lot of ways. Number one would be we're not just that fickle leaf on the wind anymore. It becomes liberating to say that, well, I didn't become angry because even though I had the thought, I just let it go. Novel idea, right? Well, we have to have that muscle strong enough that whenever the anger thought comes up, we can actually let it go. That's the hard part, right? We have got to let it go. Otherwise, we're just in the same loop or the same pattern. We're feeding the anger again, therefore more likely to be angry next time, whether it's at an inanimate object or another person, which is most unfortunate, you know. People really hurt other people whenever they're angry. People say awful things. They act out in ways they probably wouldn't with a sound mind, because anger is like this supercharged emotion. It's very volatile. It's been said that anger as an emotion is just like holding a hot coal in your hand. So what happens when you hold a hot coal in your hand? Well, you get burned, right? It hurts you, and then you're all agitated because you got a hot coal in your hand. And meditation lets us kind of relax our grip on that coal, because the coal can represent all of the negative emotions, right? In other words, the emotions that make us feel bad. I know that seems simplistic, but you know, every emotion is kind of connected to either good or bad, right? We can make two columns and list all of our primary emotions, at least the ones that we can put into words, right? Because sometimes it's hard to put emotion into words, and then they would fall under good or bad, right? Even like what we would call a neutral emotion, just like kind of feeling like blah or whatever, that's kind of not a very good feeling, so it would fall in the bad column. And then you have on the other side all of your good emotions, which people they kind of chase for too much, because whenever you're constantly chasing for those good emotions, you're just really, you know, they're being tailed by the bad thoughts or the bad emotions. So you really got to get a handle on things. Whenever we meditate, so those two columns kind of begin to disintegrate. We start to eliminate what's called duality. So as I said before, you have hot and cold, love and loss. You have kind of these emotions that have their opposites, and through meditation we began to have a feeling of being okay, no matter what thought comes, which I promise is more liberating than chasing after these like especially the sensory emotions, you know, like you associate happiness with food, you associate happiness with you know, some kind of feeling, you know, you associate it with some kind of visual thing, or even a smell. That can be something too, although not as common, where they work together, right? You know, like an ice cream cone. There's so much to it. It's the texture, the smell, the taste, and even the visual of an ice cream cone. It's all part of something that is an ice cream cone, and we really become addicted to these things because they are pulling at all of our senses almost at the same time, and then we just constantly want. So want or desire, that's also a thought, right? We become addicted to something. We chase after something. Every human being, by default, will kind of become enamored with something, right? We're either chasing after money, we're chasing after the ideal relationship. We're chasing after a million other things, right? I mean, some people chase after things that are very good and holistic, but most people's endeavors, they're kind of like this never-ending loop, you know, especially like a primary one that a lot of people in first world countries can relate with is you chase after the almighty dollar, right? So you start at the bottom and then you try to break this this barrier, and now you're in this class of people, and but you're still not very happy, and then you're going to get happy when you get that house or that car or that promotion, and you find that it's very unfulfilling when you get there. Although you're making more money than when you started, you're still overall very unhappy. And why does that happen? Well, it happens because you're chasing like an endless feedback loop. You can never win. You'll never win when you're chasing something like that. Same thing goes for people who have any kind of problem, like with too much food, with too much anything, you know, so too much social media. They don't know how to put it down. They think that okay, well, this time, you know, I'm going to do that, and then I'll be able to walk away from it. Or once I get this many people or this many followers, then that's really what I'm going to make it. It's going to matter to me. Well, then you're just in the same spot as the people chasing the money, but once you get there, the mind, by nature, by design, by evolutionary design, will chase after more in like an endless loop. Some people are lucky enough to get to a point where they can introspect enough and say, well, I've gotten there, but every other time I've gotten on this step in the ladder, I haven't been happy. So what's going on here? And they'll begin to break the process down and start thinking about their thinking, and hopefully get out of the loop, right? There's some very famous examples of this, you know, people who have had a lot of money and then they become these very giving people, and they'll go on these journeys, you know, in foreign countries, and then give up most of their possessions and money. It's because they've broken out of the loop. They don't value what they used to anymore, because it's like a squirrel, you know, being trapped in one of those hamster balls. It's just running around and around and around. Even though it's moving, it's not really getting anywhere. It's not escaping the ball, right? So whenever we become very strong in our meditation, like really strong, it takes some time. It's not going to be like you just do it a few times and then you have this ultimate awakening and you're going to say, oh, well, I have great control over my mind, and I broke my money addiction, or I broke my whatever addiction, you know, video game addiction or social media addiction, or, you know, our primary desire, right? We all have that. We all have a primary desire. For a long time, my primary desire was, strangely enough, it was video games. So kind of a good platform to talk about it. You know, video games can be quite addicting, especially nowadays. They're designed by developers who know psychology and know, reward systems. That's why you keep on seeing all the games having loot boxes. They're set up kind of like casinos, you know, and all these microtransactions, just because, you know, they're set up as dopamine hits. They know how the brain works, they know how the mind functions, so they're going to get you. They're going to get you wrapped up some way or another, and you're going to pay them, or you're going to spend a lot of time doing that and chasing it. You know, MMORPGs are really bad about this. They have a system that is kind of like this never-ending treadmill, right? You know, and then they release expansions. You know, World of Warcraft is bad about that. Final Fantasy, you know, well, I'm not knocking that they're good games, sure, you know, but how many people don't play them responsibly? You know, and by responsibly, I mean you shouldn't be neglecting your life to play these games. and very simply, it goes back to they're in the chasing the desire, which the game feeds into. They're chasing the desire thoughts that, oh, well, once I get this, I do this raid, or I do this thing, or I get this item, then all of a sudden, I made it, and whatever we're telling ourselves, but and I'm not knocking the fact either that some people really know how to manage themselves. They'll do their game time for a few hours, and then they'll really take care of their job or their kids or whatever. Great, they have balance, which is good. That's really what everyone, I guess, is striving after, is some kind of balance. We need balance. We shouldn't do too much of really anything, because if we are, and that, I know that sounds weird, but by anything I mean we shouldn't do any activity or sensory thing overabundantly, because if we do, then we're in that loop. We're feeding the never-ending treadmill effect, and it's going to keep us trapped. That's really, really tough to get off of that. Sometimes when you're in that loop, no objective thought outside of it, is going to get you off of it. And so I've been addicted to video games in the past, and people would tell me, oh, hey, you spend a lot of time on there, and I wasn't seeing it. I was in the loop. I was just chasing that online goal or whatever, and I was really putting these virtual things above, strangely, above real world problems. That's looking back upon it, that's what really hurts, is like, man, I was part of the paradigm, right? I was part of the problem, but we're really really bad observers of ourselves in space and time. That's why people go to therapists, right? We say, well, I'm going to pay you to observe me. Well, we don't have to do that. Instead, we can observe ourselves through meditation. Meditation is kind of like the ultimate. You become your own self-therapist, because truly you can break out of just about anything that a qualified mental counselor, what have you, therapist could do for you, and even more, because it's kind of like you're teaching yourself, kind of like the story, if you teach a man to fish, you don't have to feed him anymore, right? Well, you're teaching yourself how to fish, and now when you start to go through the process of meditation, you become like the fisherman, right? You start to have this really good, wholesome mind that's able to do what it wants instead of being a slave to it. So you start to break free of the cycles, usually it's cycles that keep you entrapped. You start to see the world as it really is. You start to see people as they really are. And by that I mean, you start to have more compassion for others, because you start to see that other people are trapped in this wheel that's these treadmills they're running on, and they think that by chasing these things they're going to be extremely happy someday, but that never happens, because ultimately you can never be happy all the time. It's almost impossible, but you can bring a lot of peace into your life whenever you start to meditate, because you can minimize the time you spend in the state of negative emotions, and then you can prioritize your time for spending it in the good emotions. That's not saying that you can completely eliminate all the negative emotions. That's impossible. We're human beings. We were designed by evolution to have these emotions. To have them would be literally inhuman, and then we would destroy the fabric of who we are. We can still be, prone to being dumb and getting mad at inanimate objects sometimes, but I guarantee you, if you meditate, it will lessen the intensity and the duration of you being stuck in those negative emotions. So how does it work? Well, because when you develop your skill in meditation, you develop your skill in being able to realize more in a faster manner that you are in a negative emotion. You know, most people don't do that until like they'll say like, oh well, I cooled down and now I'm ready to talk or whatever. Well, a seasoned person who is good at introspection of themselves, they will be able to just simply say, oh well, man, I just was able to realize I was starting to get angry. Before I even really got angry, I was able to let that go. Now that's phenomenal. That's ultimate self-management. I think that, and I don't know why, this isn't taught in almost any school. We're not taught how to manage ourselves. We're taught how to count numbers. We're taught how to speak good English, you know, especially in America, speak good English. We're taught history, but we're not taught about the most important thing in the whole world, which is our mind, and we don't even know how to manage it. That's tough, because we should really know how to manage our mind. Our mind is with us all the time, just like our body is. The body and the mind are inseparable. You can't have one without the other, because if one dies, so does the other. So let's put it like this, you know, a lot of us we may take really good care of our bodies, but what do we do to take care of our mind? Most of us don't do anything, right? We'll say, well, I'm going to take a physical vacation, right? I'm going to take a couple weeks off work. I'm going to have a good time. I'm going to go to someplace in Mexico, go on the beaches, and I'll be good and I won't have any worries. Bullcrap. You're still going to be worried. You're still going to be worried about your flight to get there, if it's going to be on time. You're still going to be worried about, making it there, making it on time, and doing stuff down there. You're still going to be worried about, I don't know, maybe getting sick. You had some bad nachos or something like that, and it's just part of being human. Your vacation doesn't free you from your mind. You've taken it with you to Mexico. It's going to be there. So how do we take a vacation with our mind? Well, quite simply, we sit in usually a quiet space. We meditate. So in other words, we learn to not pay attention to our thoughts, and we become much more peaceful. And peaceful and happiness may be very close, but they're very different. Being at peace is just kind of letting things be as they are. Stop trying to control things around you and people, because we don't own people. I mean, at the end of the day, I might say, well, I own my cat. She's sitting right here. I don't own my cat. She's an independent entity. She thinks and does kind of what she wants. Sure, she plays off of my thoughts and emotions, but at the end of the day, she does what she wants, So the same thing with people. At the end of the day, they do what they want. And we're not going to be the ones to say or do anything that's going to change that. Well, sure, we can wish things, hopefully we're wishing good things upon our fellow man instead of awful angry thoughts and wishing them harm. But I understand it's easy to be in that harmful kind of mentality where you wish bad things happen to bad people. But those bad people just have bad thoughts, and they don't know how to not think those bad thoughts. So, like I said before, the snowball effect, it keeps on going. It builds momentum in their minds. Maybe they truly also have a chemical imbalance, and because what is the number one prerogative of every species? We want to survive, right? We want to be happy and healthy. Okay, that is like every species, every living organism on this planet has that agenda. So people who are quote unquote bad, I call them bad actors because they are simply doing bad actions in response to bad thoughts. They don't know how to let them go. Instead, they've built such momentum with these thoughts, it's driven them to action, which unfortunately usually is very harmful to them as a person. And then we kind of throw them away and put away the key, which is pretty awful. You know, they don't get any real help or rehabilitation. I mean, not in America anyway. That's where I'm from. In America, we don't offer true rehabilitation to anybody, prisoners anyway. Kind of throw away the key, and they get these bullcorn programs that don't really help them. It's all politics, but I won't go into that because that's not what this is about. This is about you and your mind, which coincidentally used to be about me and my mind. It still is. I mean, everything that I do is a product of my mind. Everything that I see, everything that I touch has to go through the filter of my mind. So what do I mean by that? Well, this is why it's so important to be able to manage your own thoughts, because on a very basic level, the mind works like this. We see a stimulus, or we have some sensory stimulus, sensory being one of the five senses, taste, touch, smell, auditory, tactile, they call it. And that sensation or stimulus provokes a thought within us, almost so fast we don't even realize it. So then the thought immediately is going to be good or bad in our mind, because that's the way a basic mind works, right? So we're either having good thoughts or bad thoughts based on external and internal stimulus all the time. And most people get whenever I say external stimulus. You see something and it makes a thought, and you either pay attention to it or you don't, or depending on the intensity of the thought, you react to it. So just a simple chain I could give you as an example is that we see, I'll go back to the ice cream cone, because everybody pretty much knows about ice cream for the most part. You see the ice cream cone. So depending on the person and their circumstance, they're either going to have a desire for it or a repulsion against it. So desire would be like, maybe, they see the ice cream and it's their favorite flavor, it's a hot day, and they imagine how good it would be. So, and they're just gonna go get ice cream. Okay, so the thought turned into a little bit of momentum, and then they had the action. So it happened really quick. On the flip side, maybe someone sees it and they hate that particular flavor, they're repulsed by it, and they say, oh, or maybe they're lactose intolerant and they see the ice cream and they're like, oh, keep that away from me, I'm gonna get far away from that as I can. So, they have a more negative reaction to it. So this process happens all the time. We're constantly having stimulus, and positive or negative thoughts, and sometimes they drive us into action and sometimes they don't. And then on the other side, like I said, we have internal stimulus. Internal stimulus comes from memory or things that have been imprinted on us. In the case of like maybe we were abused in our past, that internal stimulus can become very destructive because the abuse keeps on recurring, and it, like I said before, the snowball effect is in play. So the abuse comes up, we try to not think about it because it's awful, but in not thinking about it, we're adding to it. Instead of just letting it pass and not paying attention to it, we're like, oh, I just want to get away from this thought. These thoughts, they keep on tormenting me, and I just want them to stop. We have a little kitty cat visitor right here, a little sweetheart. Hey, girl. Yep. It's a good cat. Sweet cat. Come on, sweetheart. Reach down. So we have good thought, bad thought. It keeps on happening all the time. Internal stimulus, it really starts to hurt us if we don't want the thought to be there. And then, as I said before, we just build the momentum on it, and it just it's kind of like a haunting, right? It just keeps on being there. We want it to go away, we push it away, but we can't. So there is, strangely enough, a very simple method for getting out of that without having to go to therapy and spending thousands and thousands of dollars. We become our own self-help. We're all strong enough to do it because why? We all have minds. Every single one of us has a mind. You know, we all think. We either think actively, like when we're doing a math problem, or we think passively, which is like when we just kind of sit and thoughts arise of their own accord, which is passively is what's happening most of the time. Most of the time we're not actively thinking, because most of the time what we think is in response to stimulus. Even when we're learning, those thoughts we have were in response to the stimulus of learning. So it becomes just a bunch of stimulus, a bunch of thoughts. It's a very simple thing, but it can be insidious. It can be really insidious because it hurts. It hurts when we have a bad thought that we can't get rid of, or some kind of really bad actor, you know. Sorry about that. The music is kind of stopping, but it's too loud. I can turn it down. So at the end of the day, how do we help ourselves? We meditate. We practice meditating regularly. But it's important we have a good teacher, because there's a lot of false teachers out there, just like there is in anything. They'll kind of, you know, like you can have a really good, let's say, yoga instructor, right? But you can have a really bad yoga instructor. They can, you know, they can seem like they know what they're talking about. They can seem like they know how to do it, but in reality, a lot of people just want your money, right? That's like the thing about our society, especially in America nowadays. Everybody just wants your money. I think it's more rare to meet a lot of people who care genuinely for another person's well-being. everybody's always so concerned about their own desires, right? But I don't fault them or blame them for it. They don't know how to help themselves. It's not that I'm being judgmental, because I'm not trying to be judgmental. I'm just like stating a objective observation. You know, people really, they're suffering, and they don't know it. You know, and even on a more subtle level than suffering, it's just like discontent. People are so discontent. You know, you hear people say that, like, let's say, you get a burger and it's got ketchup on it. You don't really like ketchup, MF, or, well, I'm gonna go in there and give them a piece of my mind, and is it really worth all that? Is it really worth getting all mad over and all that stuff? Do you really hate ketchup that much? Are you really gonna go ruin another person's day who's working for minimum wage to just tell them off? I mean, that's pretty awful, right? They're just trying to make it like you are. They probably are doing their best. They don't pay them very much, and they expect a lot out of those food service workers. So yeah, they mess up. It probably wasn't personal either. Most things that we interpret that happen to us, we interpret them as extremely personal. That's a bad way to look at things. Almost nothing is done truly, like, directly to harm us. And if it is, big deal. It was a product of bad thinking. Because I tell you that people aren't bad. They're extremely good. They're extremely good at their core. You even think of the biggest a-hole they all they do is seem to want everything from you and give nothing back, right? Well, they are absolutely devoured by their mind. They don't even know how to control it. They don't know how to stop it. They're just literally at the mercy of their mind and their thoughts. They're always gonna be chasing this next thing for them. They're under that default human programming of my thoughts, opinions, and feelings matter more than everyone else's, and that simply is not true. But that's how they think, and most people will live in that default programming till the day they die. And it's not completely black and white, though. As I said before, we live in the gray. Maybe a good portion of the time they're like that, but you'll get glimpses of their more true self. Maybe they have the capability for compassion a little bit here and there. That's more their true self. It's just buried under all these really bad thoughts that they've kept going for many years and don't even care to get out of the loop, because it's really easy to be a jerk, right? It's kind of easy to go down that path of I'm a jerk, I want to control everybody, I get my way, it's easy to control others, maybe I'm smarter than them, maybe whatever the reason is, but man, to live a day in their shoes where you're just constantly hurting other people, that's got to be pretty rough, even though they don't see it that way. It's very complex the way we interact with others, but going back, because I always have to pull myself back, I like to go on these big giant rants about things. The main point is we should all help ourselves, and there's a lot of self-help books. There's a lot of self-help, but I've searched and searched and searched for years. You wouldn't believe how angry of a person I used to be. for real help. And it was simply, or not so simply, I mean, when I first started meditating, it was like a barrage of thoughts. I thought, how on earth? What is described to me is I'm supposed to be meditating and just not paying attention to these thoughts and letting them go. And it was like, man, there's a million thoughts, and I keep on getting swept up by every single one of them. My cat here again. She's being a little nosy and wanting to be a star a little bit. She distracts me too, but that's okay. It's just life, man. Cats. She just wants some attention, right? They're social creatures, just like us. So, I really hope that people are able to benefit, help themselves a little bit, and just kind of lessen that grasp of their mind over themselves. We owe it to ourselves to be happier and healthier. I mean, so many times we may think we are, but man, I was a mess. I was a mess back in the past. I really thought that this was the only way to live life until I really got into self-introspection and looking at my own thoughts. And lo and behold, I just love life now. You know, I'm very stable as a person. I'm able to benefit a lot of people around me just with my, I guess you'd say, good vibes. You know, I'm not trying to be a domineering personality or force my ideology on other people. If they want to listen, that's fine. If they don't, that's fine too. There's a lot of different ways of thinking out there, but you know, there's objective truth, you know, is to say like math, 1 + 1 is 2, that's very objective. And then there's subjective, which is more like, well, you can't tell me how my mind works. Well, I would have to disagree, because once you start to know your own mind more, that, except in the case of true mental illness, that is how all minds function. Just like if I was to say, well, our hearts are all pretty much the same, right? They all are there, they're muscle, they pump blood, they got 4 primary chambers. The same thing with the mind. Its function is very basic, despite the ultra complexities, okay, you know. It's very basic what happens in our mind. Thought. We have attention and thought. And then, unfortunately, we have all these emotions that come with that, being part of a human, you know, designed to, you know, in an evolutionary way, help us replicate, keep us safe, and propagate our DNA, you know. That's really kind of the ultimate purpose of why we are the way we are, in a very objective view. But at the end of the day, like I said, we all owe it to ourselves to get a little bit of peace, a break, a vacation. That's how you give your mind a true vacation. You start meditating, because for let's hope at least 20 minutes a day, you don't have to be bombarded by all these thoughts, because as you flex that muscle the thoughts start to subside. You know, they start to get slower. The content starts to change. You'll start to notice patterns. All minds have it, because we all have habits, right? We're creatures of habit. So what's your pattern? You know, we all are going to have a pattern. Is the pattern to obsess over, I don't know, food? Is a pattern to obsess over money, women, men? You know, I don't know. We all have it. But to see these patterns in us is the first step we can go down and say, well, now I've seen the pattern, I really do have one, and now I can do something about it, because you only know what truly makes you happy. The happiness is you know, true happiness can't by nature be intertwined with hurting another person. Why? Because that it's like the cosmic karma, right? We're always going to pay for it in some way or another. It's got to be wholesome, you know. Things like art, you know, a lot of people find a lot of happiness out of music. That's a really good thing to be happy with, you know. But even then, you can't do that all the time, because you'll just be miserable, because another part of your life will start to suffer if all you do is your favorite activity all the time. It all has to be like equal. You know, you got to take care of your body. We only get one, so we have to take care of it. Same thing with the mind. You owe it to your mind. You got to take care of your mind, and we should really take care of our mind at least as much as we take care of our body, right? Our body is very noticeable visually, or because we have tactile feelings. We really notice, you know, my shoulder really hurts, or I'm having chest pains. But it's not as easy to notice if our mind is sick. But with practice, especially in introspection practice, we can see it pretty quickly, and we can do something about it. Because it's like, if you sprained your shoulder, but you never noticed that you sprained your shoulder, well, it's probably only going to get worse. And because the mind is kind of like this invisible thing, I mean, we all know what a mind is. If I say, you know, well, watch what you're thinking, we all know what that means. We know to pay attention to the thoughts that are coming up in our mind. But you can't touch it. You can't feel it. You can't. That's the problem, is you can only like conceptually talk about it. And that's why it's so hard to teach other people about mind discipline, is because, like I said, you have to have a good teacher. The teacher is the most important thing, because a lot of teachers will lead you astray, and a lot of teachers, they're not proficient enough with their own mind to be able to truly set another person along the path to discover their true self, which is good and pure. So there's definitely follies out there, but we all have to be the judge for ourselves and try not to get, I guess you'd say, scammed. We all innately know like objective truth. When we start to hear it, we say, well, hey, that's not a scam. This is really true. You know, it's just tough nowadays because there's so much disinformation. But I will be back another day. I'm getting tired. I need to hit the hay. Thank you out there for those that listened, and much love and peace to you. Good luck on your meditation journey. Good night.